Episode 11, Shifting Tides. We begin on Andros, with a young Aisha playing out on the beach. Her parents call out for her, then bring her back inside, much to her dismay. As she's put to bed, she asks why she can't go out and play like everyone else. Her father, Terador, explains that she isn't like anyone else. She's the princess of Andros, and as such, she can't keep sneaking out of the palace to do whatever she wants. She pouts, and her mother Niobe says she'll take it from here. After Terador leaves, Niobe decides to tell Aisha a story, the tale of the Dark Sirens. Long ago, the mermaid constellation shone bright in the night skies of Andros. One night, 4 of the 5 stars, exhausted from holding up the heavens for those on the earth below, fell into the sea, transforming into sirens. Despite the wonderful lives they came to have, they still instinctively long to return to the heavens. And so they haunt the seas, looking for potential victims to transform into their missing sister, Asphodelia, and with her return to the mermaid constellation. Particularly, they look for young women disobeying their parents and going out to the sea alone. Though Aisha is a bit nervous hearing this, she says she doesn't believe it. Regardless, Niobe reminds Aisha that many dangers lurk outside the palace walls. They must do everything that they can to ensure that she stays safe until she can protect herself. We cut to the present, where Aisha is in her room staring at a special flower, as Nabu called it. According to him, it is a magical flower that Aisha held onto when he fell into a coma. It had been in Nabu's mother's care, but Nabu's family gifted it to Aisha in the hopes that it might restore her memory. It hasn't, but Aisha feels strange whenever she's around it. As she's lost in thought, it takes a moment to realize her parents are calling for her. She heads out to the hall, where she sees the Winx, along with Riven, Timmy, Helia, and Nex awaiting her, and Aisha is not happy. Bloom apologizes for her actions, but Aisha doesn't respond. When Bloom asks if Aisha forgives her, Aisha says she does, but that doesn't mean that she's gonna come running back. She has no reason to. She doesn't know them, so why should she continue to let Bloom dictate wherever she goes? Though Bloom feels hurt, she says she understands. Still, the Winx warn her that the Trix are going after them one by one. Aisha appreciates the warning, but she assures them that she and her family can handle themselves. However, she does ask if Musa can stay so that they can talk for a while. While Musa stays, the others decide to visit Nabu while they're here. At Althea, meanwhile, Selina continues training with Icy, though she's still struggling with channeling her darkness. Icy says she wouldn't normally talk about her past, but in this case, if it's for educational purposes, so be it. Before Icy pledged herself to the ancestral witches, and even before she met Darcy and Stormy, she had a younger sister on Diamond by the name of Sapphire. Though she held her sister dear, she never felt safe in showing affection, and as such, they let themselves be pitted against each other. Since then, the fate of her sister has haunted her, and she hopes to one day be strong enough to undo what she has done. Giving it a shot, Selina flashes back to a memory of her 13th birthday, where she was all alone waiting for Bloom to show up. She called and called, but heard nothing back until the next day at school, where Bloom explained that Andy invited her to a concert last minute. Selina is devastated, but Bloom defends herself, saying Selina would have done the same if she'd been asked out. Selina walks away tearfully, muttering that she'd only throw away plans for one person, and it's the person who couldn't be bothered to do the same for her. Cutting back to reality, Selina finds herself gaining more control over her negative emotions. Darcy and Stormy call them both shortly after, as their location spell has revealed their next target, the magical flower in Aisha's possession. Back on Andros, Musa and Aisha talk about their shared interests, particularly Aisha's love of dance. Musa mentions how music helped her express how she was feeling on Melody, so maybe they ought to try the same with dancing. They do, and this makes Aisha feel comfortable talking about how everything has been stressing her out. Her parents' stress over what happened to her, the feeling of obligation to Nabu when she can't even remember him, and all the stuff going on with the Winx. And to make matters worse, the family is still split over Tritanus. Aisha has only just now learned how she'd fought her cousin as he tore their family apart and nearly destroyed the universe. And now everyone is viciously debating over whether to visit him in Light Rock Monastery, or to even send him to the Omega Dimension once he's recovered from all the toxins from his use of wild magic. It's all just too much on top of the whole dilemma with the Trix, and Aisha lets herself cry as Musa comforts her. Elsewhere, the others visit Nabu on his family's island. Queen Ligeia of the Mermaids has been helping him with her coral gem as he meditates in a pool of salt water. We learn that she's tried this technique to help restore Aisha's memories to no avail. Since Nabu has awakened, he's had to rekindle his magical abilities, and he's been diagnosed with PTSD, chronic fatigue, and fibromyalgia. The effects of the Dark Gate, followed by nearly a year in a coma, have left long-lasting effects on his body and mind. Thankfully, he and Aisha have remained friendly, and they've agreed to take things slow and get to know each other as acquaintances and go from there. Admittedly, he does miss the more open, affectionate Aisha, but he's managing. Bloom gets an idea though. She could try using her healing power from the dragon flame, to which Nabu wishes that she had thought of that forever ago, in multiple instances. During this, Riven and Nex talk off to the side. Riven is clearly nervous, but mentions that he's starting to question his sexuality, and was wondering if Nex had any advice. Nex teases Riven about just assuming which way someone floats, to which Riven says, "Didn't you flirt with me when we first met?" Nex's response, "Yep." And the blonde surfer-looking dude. Riven mentions once having a crush on Sky, but he also genuinely loved Musa. He can't be yay, to which Nex responds, "You might be bi, my dude." And suddenly, Riven's brain explodes, because, he'd never thought of that before. Unfortunately, it's at that moment they get word from King Neptune that the Trix have arrived. The Owls of Diamond are currently laying siege to Sayantis College of Ocean Magic, a school for wave wizards as well as trident and mermaid magicians. Bloom's group decides to head there with Ligeia to provide backup and fend off the Trix and their coven. Nabu meanwhile gets a bad feeling and goes to check on Aisha. Cutting to Althea, Chimera, Crystal, and Lazuli lead the charge into the school, though these students are doing a much better job than the other colleges of fighting back, because Andros is used to this nonsense. Still, the Trix decide to hang back, instructing Selina to head to the palace to get the item for the ritual. With both kingdoms of land and sea focused on defending Sayantis, they won't notice Selina slipping into the palace to steal the flower. At the palace, Musa, Aisha, and Roy hear of the disturbance. Musa asks if Aisha is okay, but Aisha is determined to save her world, even if she's afraid. They move to head out, only for Roy to notice Selina sneaking inside. He calls attention to her, and Musa warns the others that she's the one summoning all the folk monsters to help the Trix. Introducing herself as Selina, the Witch of the Moon, she uses the Legendarium to buy herself some time, summoning the Dark Sirens, Limes, Nazca, Terala, and Unla. Bloom's group arrives at Sayantis College, able to help push back the Coven's forces, alongside Neptune, Ligeia, Tressa, and Nereus. While Tecna and Flora are able to handle Chimera, Crystal, and Lazuli with their Ardorix powers, Bloom gets the idea to head to Althea to rescue Farragonda and the other professors. Nex catches on, saying that she's gonna need backup, and it'll give him a chance to save Avalon. Riven says he's going too, and together the three head to Althea. Back at the palace, Musa, Aisha, and Roy continue their fight against the Dark Sirens, who prove to be difficult opponents as they shapeshift into water to evade attacks, and even reform themselves after seemingly being destroyed. Their leader, Limes, teases Aisha for how she keeps using anything that isn't water, asking if she's afraid of the might of her own world's seas. Nabu arrives, staff in hand, to help, though has trouble keeping up. Aisha rushes to his rescue, and Limes catches onto her protectiveness, targeting Nabu, while the other sirens keep Musa and Roy from helping. Elsewhere, Bloom and Nex arrive at the barrier around Althea, and Riven, on his hoverbike, activates the barrier buster, dissolving the shield for 30 seconds to let them in. They'll need to be careful on their way out, especially if the Trix are on their heels. And speak of the devil, 2 of the Trix immediately greet them. Bloom asks if Darcy didn't feel well enough to join them, then immediately charges to keep Icy and Stormy busy, while Riven and Nex head inside. The 2 manage to find the professors, only for Darcy to nearly trap them with an illusion, which Riven catches onto. He has an eye for Darcy's tricks at this point, with Nex agreeing that he's a bit rusty when it comes to her illusions. Darcy isn't keen on the 2 men she hates the most being in one place, but it will make destroying them much easier. While Nex holds Darcy off, he tells Riven to free the professors. Thankfully, Nex's light powers as a paladin are able to cut through Darcy's shadows and illusions. It's clear he doesn't want to fight her, but if Darcy does, she leaves him with no other choice than not to hold back. Outside, Bloom continues her fight with Icy and Stormy. The witches joke about how Bloom has pushed all her friends away, but are surprised by Bloom going, "Yep, I did indeed fuck up." Even so, she's trying to fix her mistakes. And by contrast, the Trix are still obsessed with the Winx, still endlessly trying to conquer the universe instead of fixing themselves and their own problems. This really ticks the Trix off, which is what Bloom was hoping for, using their anger to get the upper hand against them. Inside, Riven manages to free the professors, all of whom are conscious except Farragonda. While Nex holds off the Trix, Bloom and Riven escort the professors out. Unfortunately, they realize too late that Nex is still far behind, and before he can escape, the timer on the barrier buster ends, and the barrier closes back up. Stormy destroys the device, and the Trix knock Nex out, settling for at least one new prisoner to use as a bargaining chip down the line. Cutting back to the palace, the Dark Siren fight isn't faring very well either. In a moment of hesitation, Aisha is knocked aside, and Nabu knocked out. Limes is sure to let Aisha watch as the Sirens capture Nabu, dragging him into the sea. Aisha runs after them, only to find they've disappeared into the depths of Andros oceans. Episode 12, Siren's Song. We begin where we left off, with the Owls of Diamond retreating as Althea College disappears. Seantis College has been saved, and everyone celebrates their victory. Bloom and Riven have returned with the Althea professors, unfortunately with the news that Nex has been captured. When Farragonda awakens, she can't remember any of the girls, and the group realizes that she must have been hit with the same spell that Selina used on them. And unfortunately, that means any information that she might have had on the Legendarium is out of reach. Things get worse as Musa, Aisha, and Roy arrive, saying that Nabu has been kidnapped by the Dark Sirens. Cutting to Althea, Icy and Stormy are frustrated that they've lost their prisoners, though Darcy is quite pleased with their latest catch, on top of the fact that Selina got them Nabu's flower. Selina, meanwhile, is silently freaking out, as Avalon, being a paladin, could potentially have knowledge about Acheron. Darcy decides to go check on Nex, dismissing Icy and Stormy's curiosity on how exactly she knows him. Icy then asks Stormy, since she's the only one whose past hasn't come up yet. Stormy says she just doesn't think about it much. All she knows is that she refuses to have her power restricted by anyone, and if she ever meets Princess Veranda of Callisto, she will sweep her up in a cyclone and send her flying. In the dungeon, Nex finds himself unable to use his magic or wings. Darcy announces herself, asking if Nex is impressed with how far up in the world she's come since Zaltora. Nex scoffs, saying that he pities her, letting her mind become so warped that she thinks destruction and mayhem are something to be proud of. Biting back, Darcy says that she's at least her own master, compared to Nex following whatever the Light Rock Council has to say. Nex says that it's at least better than having Darcy try to control him, treating him like a puppet, and Darcy storms off. Back at Seantis College, Riven is off to the side. Roy takes notice, reminding Riven that it was Nex's choice to stay behind. Riven knows that, but he can't help but worry, especially because he knows how sadistic Darcy can be with her illusion magic. On top of that, he's worried about Nabu. He considered Nabu his closest friend at one point, someone who tried to encourage him to be a better man and a better partner to Musa. Roy assures him that they'll all save Nabu together, and then they'll find a way to save Nex too. Aisha, meanwhile, isn't faring very well either. They're all arguing over the best way to save Nabu, where the sirens could even be, or how they could even be real. Aisha is just shutting down, unable to handle all the stress until Musa holds her hand, reminding her that she isn't alone. The other Winx do the same, and taking a breath, Aisha tells her family to shut up and listen. They don't have time to work out their resentments and anger. Right now, Nabu needs them, and they need to act quickly. And to do that, they need to work as a unit. Tecna deduces that the best approach would be to understand the Dark Sirens' goal, and for that, Flora says they'll need to know more about their legend. Aisha says it's one she was told as a child to keep her from sneaking out of the palace. Ligeia nods, saying it's one shared in the homes of the islanders, and one she admittedly is not quite fond of as the Mermaid Queen. Still, she shares the tale of the Sirens' origin and how they wish to return to the Mermaid constellation through transforming a victim into their missing fifth sister, Asphodelia. Tecna's not sure why they would have taken Nabu in that case, but Aisha doesn't care about why. All that matters is getting him back. Bloom recalls a mention of the Dark Sirens, then remembers that as part of the Sirenics quest, they had visited their supposed lair, the Labyrinth of the Abyss. Ligeia agrees that they've likely returned to the place they're most familiar with in the legends, but still, Tecna can't shake the feeling that something is off, and Musa agrees. Bloom jokes about really wishing they still had Sirenics at the prospect of going underwater, but Aisha's magic should suffice. Thankfully, Buddy materializes behind her, though almost everyone is confused when Bloom seems to be talking to nothing, with Flora, Tecna, and Musa being the only ones who can see him. Musa guesses that it must be an Ardorix thing, which makes Aisha grumble a bit as the others explain that Bloom isn't losing her mind. Buddy explains that the Great Dragon was willing to pull a few strings. They'll be able to use Sirenics for underwater missions, but its connection to the Infinite Ocean has been severed, just to make sure that they don't tick off the Leviathan again. Bloom asks Buddy to thank the Great Dragon for her, and reporting the news, the Winx transform into Sirenics. Once they reach the labyrinth, Tecna performs a scan of the area, finding that the Dark Sirens have gathered in the central chamber. Everyone decides to split up through different entrances, allowing them to have a better chance at sneaking up on them from all sides, and they split up by group: the Winx, the Specialists, and Ligeia's family. The Winx will focus on breaking the Dark Siren spell with their fairy dust, while the other two groups hold off the Sirens. As they enter, they find little to no resistance, which Bloom finds odd considering the first time they came here, they were all separated by powerful currents. As each group reaches the cavern, they put their plan into action. However, the Sirens don't seem to be putting up much of a fight. The Winx surround the bubble containing Nabu and begin using their fairy dust, only for Limes to sweep Aisha up in an attack, and the Sirens finish casting their spell, transforming her into Asphodelia. Transformed, Aisha attacks the Winx. The Sirens are overjoyed, believing that now they can finally return to the stars once they reach the surface. Immediately, Flora uses the coral growing around the labyrinth to block off all the exits, keeping the Sirens inside, while Ligeia tends to Nabu and casts a spell to keep him breathing. The Winx and Roy try to call out to Aisha, but it's not working. as she continually says that she is Asphodelia, and now she will give up everything so that she and her siren sisters can return to the stars. Unfortunately, the siren Unla controls Coral, and she is able to part it to allow the sirens escape, while simultaneously entrapping the Winx. Flora struggles to control the coral as Unla has bewitched them with wild magic. Thankfully, Ligeia is able to use the coral gem to clear that right up, which Flora speeds up with her Elixir of Sirenic spell. The specialists head the Dark Sirens off. Nazca attempts to shock them with bioelectric lightning, which Tecna absorbs and redirects with her aura of Sirenics. Bloom then uses Inferno of Sirenics to knock the rest of the sirens away, isolating Aisha, or rather Asphodelia. Nabu catches up and has an idea on how to reach Aisha. She's always been afraid of losing herself and being alone, and as such he believes they need a way to reach her, specifically through Musa's powers. Musa uses Requiem of Sirenics singing to Aisha, which Nabu joins in on. Nabu's voice is horrifically off-key, but it seems to be working. We see inside Aisha's mind that she has been trapped by her darkness, but the echoes of their voices begin to break through the silence. Instinctively, Aisha reaches through the darkness and she opens her eyes. Sea green flames surround her and she transforms into Ardorix. The others comment that Sirenics might have been a better move, but Aisha says she's going to be just fine as these are her waters. She summons her Ardorix weapon, the Trident of the Depths. Though she admits the Sirens have impressive water spells, they're not the only ones with power over the tides. And right now, they're in her home turf, and they have royally pissed off the Fairy of Waves. She quickly dispatches them. The sirens transform back into starlight, which Aisha absorbs into her fairy dust bottle. Everyone regroups outside the Andros Palace. Aisha thanks Musa and Nabu for saving her, and then thanks everyone else as well. She still can't remember everything, but she's certain the memories she's lost are still there. There's something deep down holding them back. At the very least, she's grateful everyone is okay. Even Bloom. Bloom apologizes again, and Aisha responds, "Didn't I already forgive you?" She decides to rejoin the group. After all, Bloom is going to need someone with a backbone to keep her in line, and Bloom is happy to hear that. Aisha also asks Nabu if he'd be up for a date once the universe is saved or whatever, and Nabu happily agrees, saying that any time with Aisha will be well worth the wait. Aisha also decides to talk to her family about visiting Tritanus. However, when she goes to her room to rest, she finds that Nabu's flower is missing. Tecna deduces that Selina must have stolen it during her initial attack. And to make matters more stressful, Avalon arrives. Now that he has recovered, he has information about what Selina could be up to, explicitly saying that the Trix are unaware of her actual goal. And this information has to do with the Scarlet Paladin, Acheron.